everyone, and welcome to the 20th episode of A QISSAA with Ishika, quintessential and inspiring stories of South Asian artists, funded by the California Arts Council Individual Artist Fellow Grant. My name is Ishika Muchhal, and I'm coming to you from the unceded lands of the Fernandino Tataviam people, also known as Santa Clarita. I am so excited to introduce to you my guest today, actor, director, and playwright Priyanka Shetty. Priyanka is focused on making art that is a reflection of our times. Her critically acclaimed one-woman show, The Elephant in the Room, has been performed at numerous venues including the Kennedy Center and the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, amongst other national and international tours. She recently made her off-Broadway debut with her second solo play, #Charlottesville, and is currently working on The Wall, her final play in her Triptych of Solos. Priyanka was selected for the prestigious Kennedy Center Playwriting Intensive for 2021 and is a semi-finalist for the 2022 Eugene O'Neill National Playwriting Conference. Priyanka earned her Master of Fine Arts in Acting from the University of Virginia and has served on the faculty of the University of Virginia's Department of Drama. Next year, Priyanka will be coordinating a nationwide premiere of her Triptych of Solos across multiple cities. I am so incredibly honored to welcome Priyanka Shetty.
Hey, Shika. Thank you so much for having me on your show. And it's your 20th episode. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to have you. Thank you for agreeing to be here.
Thank you. It's the pleasure is mine.
Oh, thank you. So let's get started. What drew you into acting and what made you decide that you want to pursue this as a career?
Oh, wow. It was really as early as, when I was probably in 6th or 7th grade, when I was really drawn into literature in general. And then, that's when, in school, we were being put into various clubs. There was a science club and there was a drama club. And of course, I gravitated towards the drama club. And whenever I would read literature, I would always imagine them as characters on stage. And I would always imagine myself as those characters on stage. But really, that drama club became the outlet for a lot of even writing. They would give us these prompts and we would come up with these little skits or mini dramas, mini plays. And the facilitators of that were guests from outside, and they were really appreciative of anything that I would come up with. And they would, I remember once I ended up writing or creating something for the club, and that ended up being read at all of the, English literature classes for all the high school students. And I was still in primary school at that time. So it really lit the spark. I know it sounds really simple and maybe even stupid, but for me, that was really pivotal in realizing that I had a creative spark in me. But unfortunately, like most, South Asian children growing up, you get sort of directed into engineering or medicine or things that your parents really want you to do. And for me, after that little exposure during the drama club in 7th grade, theater didn't come back into my life until much later. So I ended up pursuing a bachelor's degree in computer science. I ended up becoming a software engineer, as the cliche goes. And I found my way back into theater as a techie at an IT company. When I read Rabindranath Tagore's Chokher Bali, again, I was so fascinated by the protagonist, Binodini, and I wanted to play her on stage. And then I was like, how am I going to make that happen? And I thought, okay, let me write an adaptation of this novel. So I wrote the script. And then I was like, okay, what do I do next? Maybe I start a theater group, and then maybe I direct the show and I also produce the show. And then I get to play this character, right? So I got together these IT engineers and these other techies at the company I worked for at the time, Infosys. And we started rehearsing this play that I'd adapted. And we had no idea where we were going to perform, right? And then maybe like a year later, I mustered enough courage and I went to the HR person who was in charge of all of these events for employee engagement. And I told her, hey, you know what? So you know how you invite theater groups from outside to come and perform at our company? And we have this beautiful, gorgeous auditorium too,
Oh,
like
nice.
2,500 seats, right? So I told her, how about we present something that's made by employees, for
Yeah.
employees. So, she just wanted to humor me. So she agreed to come and see like a few minutes from the play. And I remember that evening, after watching the entire play, she told me that I'd only come to see 2 minutes of it and say, you know what, maybe next time. But she ended up watching the whole thing. And then she said, let's talk dates. Let's set a budget. Let's make this happen.
Amazing.
And it was so awesome because when we ultimately did perform on the stage, the 2,500 seat auditorium was completely packed. People
Wow.
were seated on the stairs, on the aisles. They were by the doors. They missed their evening shuttles, and they were leaving the theater talking about the characters in the play and not how great the actors were. That's when you really know they were immersed in the storytelling.
Right.
And something amazing happened was, like, at the end, everyone got up and they rushed onto the stage, which has never happened again in my career. But I remember this one woman just come up to me and she held my face and she said, "You're going to go really far." And I was like, oh, does she really see me as taking this up as a career? Or did
Yeah.
she really think that I would continue on this path? And that truly was what got me thinking, what if? Because the thrill that I felt when I was on stage, I wasn't getting that from anything else in life.
Right.
So a couple of years down the line, I did decide to take the plunge and commit myself to this wonderful career of an artist. But I know it's a long story, but really that was my really invitation into the world of theater again. And I haven't looked back ever since.
Yeah, I think that's so beautiful in the fact that you're telling that you saw an opportunity to tell a story, and without waiting for another person to like make a space for you to tell that story, you took the initiative upon yourself to like shape your own narrative, and that shaped your trajectory in a way.
Yeah, and it ended up becoming what the rest of my, like, even after I got into an acting school and took up acting formally and could officially call myself an actor, right, rather than an aspiring actor, that agency that of creating opportunities for yourself became a kind of a thread which continued on in my career. Is even after I came into the US, there was a time when I got stuck in the rut of waiting for others to see me in a certain role and waiting for somebody else to cast me in certain roles or to tell certain stories. And I remember telling my mentor at that time that I miss the old me who didn't wait around for anyone else to give her that opportunity. I miss the old me who created that opportunity for herself. And she said, well, you can still do that. And that's when I really, original work and solo performances became my sort of calling here in the US.
Yeah, and you started doing that, like, that's what got you started when you were saying in 6th, 7th grade?
Yes.
You were a
Yes,
solo performer back then too.
that's true. That's true.
Yeah. There's this African proverb that I keep on thinking of for whoever I encounter that does, like, their own work. It's like, "Until the lion learns to tell the story will always glorify the hunter."
Oh, I love that.
And I think that's it's so
That's
fitting, especially
powerful.
for, like, marginalized communities, like, when we feel empowered enough to tell our stories,
Hmm.
they're always gonna be more authentic than told by someone else, right?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Speaking of identity, can you talk about how your identity as a multi-hyphenate artist has impacted you? And since you work with so many mediums, how do they like cross-pollinate and enrich each other?
Yeah, I think it's very empowering to not limit yourself to any one thing.
Mm,
And I, to be honest, I fell into that trap. especially in graduate school, where you're training to be an actor, right? And you're getting ready for the professional world. You're told a lot of times of what you can't do, how things work, and how you need to fit into a certain box. And I remember even as a graduate student, I would go up to, the main faculty who was in charge of our program and say, can I take a playwriting class or can I take a directing class? And the answer was always like, no, you are here to pursue an MFA in acting and you need to be really focused on that, right? And maybe that's not the case in all universities, but sometimes when you're specializing in a certain field, they want you to have laser sharp focus on just doing that during your time there. But I think at some innate level, I knew that who I am as an artist is informed by all of these different identities that I have. I was always a writer before I became an actor, and then and I had dabbled in directing, more driven by circumstances than by choice, but I had grown to love it, and that had informed my craft as an actor and as a playwright. So there was this beautiful synergy that happens in your own self as you grapple with these different identities, right? And for me, I noticed what was happening was my understanding of these other aspects was strengthening my skills as an actor, because I appreciated what direction I was getting from a director at a better level, right? It made me a better collaborator. So I really think that right now, everyone should be multi-hyphenates, even though it's become like a term now. Are you a multi-hyphenate? It sounds fancy, but really, I think all of us are. It's just learning how to balance each of these identities so that they can all coexist without one derailing the other.
For sure.
So I think I'm very fortunate that I'm at a point where all three of these identities, I'm an actor, I'm a playwright, and a director, and I'm getting to sort of play around with each of these equally, right? And I'm as much of an actor as I am a playwright, and as much of a director as I am an actor and playwright. So I think I'm very fortunate, and it really is a privilege to have that. So I'm really enjoying it, to be honest, and I hope that it continues.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like if you have a dish, the more spices or like the more ingredients you have, it just like enriches the dish's flavor.
Yeah, without one overpowering the other, right?
Exactly. And this all sounds so lovely, like the ability that you have to really write your own work, perform it, and produce it. It must be empowering. But on the other side, I just wanted to ask you, what are like some of the struggles that you have faced with solo performance and self-producing?
Yeah, I wouldn't call myself. So again, I think I'm fortunate that I've never had to be in a position where I have funded my own. Like, so I have self-produced in the way that, yes, I put on the producer hat and I take care of the logistics of putting up a show and taking it on a tour, and I have developed that skill set. But thankfully, I've never been in a position where I'm pumping in a lot of my money and I'm hoping to make an investment out of it. So in that sense, I've always had a theater that has come on board as a producer. The only exception to that is the Edinburgh Fringe, where everyone sort of it is an investment in your art. But some of the challenges I faced are, it can be a very lonely process, especially if in the early creation phases of it, when you're still developing it, when you're not still in the room with the director putting it on its feet, rewriting, writing, and then even after you've gone through the rehearsal process with a director and a full team, then when you're taking it on the road, you're kind of alone. And the time where it stops being lonely is when you step on stage and you're with the audience.
Right.
And that is such a relief, and that's always something I look forward to, is to be done with everything else until I'm on stage with the audience, because then I'm not alone anymore. They're with me as my scene partners
Right.
during storytelling. There are a lot of challenges. It's hard to be taken seriously as
Mm.
a solo performer, especially because, and these are not my thoughts, but this is what I've heard a lot, is that there's so many solo performances out there, like so many one-person shows, and sometimes that, they're out there, but when they're not truly ready to be out there.
Mm.
But I guess the excuse goes that, oh, I've seen a bunch of solo shows that are not good. So when you bring me the idea of performing a solo show, I'll be like, oh, 60 minutes of
Right.
watching a person cry about their life.
Yeah.
So dealing with that mindset and convincing people that, no, this is legitimately can be
Right.
as rich as a multi-character show.
Yeah.
Can legitimately take the audience on a journey, and has the impact that a multi-character show can
Mhm.
have. And a lot of times it's seen as, oh, some person with just a cube, or a rehearsal cube, the black
Right.
box,
Right. The Black Box Theater.
doing
Yeah.
the entire. And my response to that is that no, these are really rich worlds. I have a set, and
Right.
it does require a lot of elements that you would see in a multi-character. So sometimes it's hard to communicate that,
Mhm.
and it's easy to be not taken seriously.
Right.
But for me, fortunately, what has worked is word of mouth has really helped me,
Mhm.
and connections that people have made and relationships that have been
Mhm.
built over time, that I'm not dealing with those kind of questions or that kind of mindset
Right.
anymore. But when you're initially breaking in, that can be a real downer, when
Yeah.
you've created something beautiful,
Yeah.
at least that you think is beautiful, and you want to share it with the world, but they already have a preconceived notion without even
Mm.
having seen it or experienced it. Um,
Right.
yeah, so those were some of the challenges. And then, yes, someone once told me, don't become a fringe festival junkie. I was like, what? And yes, and apparently that's a thing that, if you do too many fringe festivals,
Mhm.
um, let's say in the US or across the world, then you just get stuck in that circuit, and
Mm.
regional theaters, and won't be receptive to your
Oh.
show. I
Wow.
hope that's not true. But yeah, there are all of these preconceived notions about solo performances
Yeah.
that really have nothing to do with the art itself, but they're just
Right.
ideas that people have in their minds about what they are. But I really think to truly know what a show is, you have to experience it first, and then
Right. Yeah.
the
I
judgment.
think that's interesting what you were saying about like you kind of being labeled as a fringe junkie, because it's
Yeah,
kind of like in the screen world, if like you do too many commercials, you're not going to be considered for other like on-screen scripted roles. And
yeah.
it's just like what do you do to get in? What do you do to tell your story? How and why is that a
Yeah, and
limitation?
why should it be looked down
Yeah,
upon, right? Any opportunity to perform is a privilege.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you were speaking of how you don't necessarily do the funding and you find theaters to collaborate with. So I'm just wondering, how do you find the best collaborators? Like, what do you look for in a venue, in a producer, director, or whoever you work with? How do you find those people?
Yeah, I keep an eye out for theaters that are, one, interested in new works,
Mm,
and that are interested in especially the kind of themes that I write about, whether it's social justice or politically inclined
mhm,
pieces, or pieces about identity, um, and even the story of immigrants, because
mm,
a lot of my writing is about that angle
mhm.
as well. My journey as an immigrant artist, and a lot of my works is also while they're universal, there's always a personal thread in them,
Of course.
uh, right? A personal connection to whatever I'm writing about and performing about.
Mhm,
So I tend to initiate conversations with organizations that already have an interest in the kind of themes and topics that I'm writing about.
mhm,
And sometimes it's even, um, relationships that are built over time,
mm,
because a lot of times you may meet people who are operating at a level that you may not be at, but it's not a no, but it's a maybe later.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel like as I develop my work and as I get better at my craft, when I get to that level, I know they'd be open to having a conversation.
Right.
And off late, I've really seen conversations that I had in maybe 2018 leading to finally something, a
Wow.
performance or a gig now.
Wow.
Right. And I think a lot of it has to do with not seeing, I hate the term networking, and I hate the term, oh, I'm here to make connections,
Right.
because a lot of it is really based on genuine, authentic relationships,
Right.
and not seeing relationships as transactional, not seeing every person you meet as an opportunity, but seeing what needs they have, and if you can fill it, then make an offer that. And
Yeah.
if they want it, great. If not,
Right.
something else.
Yeah.
So not always getting too shark-like,
Yeah. It's like a
in this quest.
symbiosis. Yeah.
Yes, it
Yeah.
really is about fostering these relationships and
Mhm.
filling a need where there is one, and really seeing your art as an offering to somebody else.
Mhm.
Just like when they say, as actors, when you audition, go
Right.
in there into the room because you have something to offer that they
Mhm.
might need. And if it works, then great, it's a fit
Yeah.
and you move forward. So that's the kind of you know,
Yeah.
mentality I go in, even for solo performances or any
Mhm.
original work that I create.
Mhm.
It may not be in line with what this theater or this organization is trying to do, and that's
Right.
totally fine.
Mhm.
Uh, and also that when I meet artistic directors, that it's not for the purpose of booking a gig.
For sure.
Um, Right. I think that really helps. And I think that's a good way to approach this, and not um I don't like it when it gets transactional,
Mhm.
when
Mhm.
when your encounters with people in the arts becomes about who can help me get my
Yeah.
somewhere, because that is such an easy thing to detect even
Yeah.
when you first start having conversations with people. And I found that this attitude has made people more receptive to my work. I'm allowing
Mhm.
them to come to me as opposed to hounding them with, hey, I have a new
Mm.
story to tell. Will you present it at your theater?
Yeah. That's beautiful. You're all moving forward together rather than trying to like use each other as ladders, for sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. You were talking about the work you write being immigrant centered, social justice centered. Would you mind sharing a little bit about your Triptych of Solos?
Sure. So it really started with my solo show, The Elephant in the Room. It's
Mhm.
I think the first full-length play I ever wrote.
Oh.
And it also is my first one-woman show
Mhm.
solo play. And so that came out of, so I was in graduate school, and I had just moved from I moved from India to America for
Mhm.
the very first time, and I go from living in India all the way to living in the South in the US.
Oh.
Right. So it was, yeah. So when I told
That's
people I was
fun.
going to grad school in Charlottesville, Virginia, they'd be like, "Oh, okay," and I didn't know what that meant. I was like,
Yeah.
"What's wrong? It looks beautiful. It's a fully funded program. I'm going to have a
Right.
blast." And I did. But of course, I was beginning to notice a lot of things that, um, you know, were indicative of what my experience would be in America then and moving
Mm.
forward. And also some experiences that were kind of specific to that particular place.
Mm.
What I didn't expect that is that I would experience something particularly discriminatory slash racist at an academic institution.
Mm.
And when that happened, that was really something that shattered me.
Mm.
And I found that the only way I could express myself was through my art. So I had written this speech of passionate concern for voice class in drama
Mm.
school, which was very tongue-in-cheek take on, little ideas that people had about India and people who come
Yeah.
from India, and microaggressions. And it was a humorous piece that I had
Right.
sort of shared with my cohort and
Mhm.
my professors, and it had landed really well, and it was very funny. And people had told me, oh my gosh, you should totally, record this. You should put this on YouTube. It's going to go viral,
Yeah.
or do a solo show. And I was like, yeah, maybe someday. And I
Yeah.
just forgotten about it. But when I was at this lowest of lows during my time as a grad student, I was like, wait a minute, all of these little seeds that are in this tongue-in-cheek humorous take on my time in America have manifested into what I'm dealing with right now. They were red flags. And that speech was titled The Elephant in the Room. And I thought at that point it was really funny because of the stereotypical idea of Indians riding elephants.
Right.
But as I continue to work on that play, the metaphor of the elephant has presented itself in so many shapes and forms that it amazes me. That dramaturgically, that it was so rich and so full of possibilities, and the way the play evolved and the discoveries that I made while writing it, especially dealing with, there was a moment in the process of writing the play where I realized that, oh my gosh, I think the way I say these words is Indian, but it's actually British. And I'm complaining about how Americans pronounce these words. And that led to the realization, which is a line in the play, about how colonized is my mind, right? So what is my identity is really one of the things that I talk about. Like, am I stuck between 1, 2, or 3 countries? And what does it mean to be Indian? What does it mean to be Indian in America? So all of these things were packed into this solo show, The Elephant in the Room. And then in 2017, while I was still a graduate student in Virginia, the Unite the Right rally happens, which, if you remember, was the white supremacist rally, August 11th and 12th, 2017, where they descended on our university grounds, some of them from Charlottesville, Virginia, some of them from outside, bearing tiki torches and saying all of these super offensive slogans. And unfortunately, it also led to a car attack and the death of an individual from Charlottesville, Virginia, Heather Heyer. So so as I was understanding bias and race through my own personal experience, and then I see something as extreme as this play out on the university grounds and in the city that I was living in then, I kind of did something similar to what Tectonic Theatre Project did with the Laramie Project, where they went into Laramie, Wyoming, and interviewed a lot of people when Matthew Shepard was murdered. So I interviewed the counter-protesters who were present on those 2 days, a lot of them who were present during the Tiki Torch rally at the Rotunda, and also the ones who were victims of the car attack. I interviewed Heather Heyer's mother, and all of these personal narratives of what they experienced on those 2 days was so different from what we were consuming through newspapers and documentaries and all of these TV, the Vice reports that were coming out. And I realized that the human angle of what people dealt with and how they were continuing to deal with it and heal was totally left unexplored. So I ended up devising an ensemble piece with other actors in Charlottesville, and I played the role of the interviewer. I was also sort of in the play. And then eventually this also became a solo play where I played myself and all of the people I interviewed. So this became the second part of the triptych. And I knew that this was sort of thematically connected to another piece that I wanted to write about, which was about immigration and the immigrant struggle, because the whole detention centers thing was becoming a thing here in the US, and India was following suit by trying to kick out, Bangladeshi refugees and things like that. And then there was the Brexit. So I was like, all of these, and even the Hindu-Muslim communal violence, which became so bad over the last few years, and that tension, which has never really gone away, but which was planted all the way back during the British rule. So the idea of the wall as a metaphor, really intrigued me, and also my own personal struggle with immigration as an immigrant artist was part of that too. But I realized that the whole idea of the immigrant struggle is very multidimensional and very different based on where you're coming from. So I knew I wanted to write this play called The Wall about the metaphorical walls and physical walls that
Right.
separate us. So that's the Triptych of Solos.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's loaded, and it's a lot of topics, big topics that couldn't be possibly tackled in one play alone. So
Right.
my hope is that breaking it down into 3 plays of 3 completely different genres and styles will allow us to approach each of these conversations, and serve as entry points into having those bigger, larger discussions
Yeah.
around race and discrimination and immigration and all
Yeah.
of these loaded topics that we have dealt with and continue to deal with. So with the Triptych of Solos, the idea is that we will have a nationwide launch in 2024-25, where we identify 8 hubs across the country, and different theaters come on board to present 3 theaters from each hub to present one of the plays, and that we have a huge nationwide conversation around it. We're going to have a virtual hub where, artistic leaders from different parts of the US can also communicate, so that there aren't those physical barriers, that we're not in the same place
Right.
to have these discussions. So, and also there's a community engagement aspect to it, where I will physically visit each of these hubs 3 times with each of the plays and continue to build those relationships and do some outreach in each of these regions. So it's a kind of a big,
Yeah.
very ambitious project,
Amazing.
but we're trying to make it happen.
Yeah. I really admire how the work that you're writing and you're describing. Obviously, I haven't had the opportunity to watch any of it, but
Yeah.
I admire how you mix your personal stories with universal themes and really open that space for those conversations that are so necessary to have. That's
Yeah,
really
and I
beautiful.
think it is through specificity
Mhm.
that we can touch upon what's universal,
Mhm.
because I've noticed that no matter like which play that I'm working on a completely different project now, which is about dementia and Alzheimer's and my
Mhm.
grandmother's struggle with it.
Mhm.
But in doing so, I'm touching upon topics like elder care and care,
Mm.
the role of the caregiver. So,
Right.
but I find that by talking about something super specific, we that is the entry point into opening up into this
Yeah.
universal struggle that we're all a
Mhm.
part of. And that's what connects us as human beings. But however, when you're working on, let's say, something very research based, there's just so much material. And if you
Mhm.
don't have something specific to hang on to, then it's just
Yeah.
overwhelming and you don't know what to begin with and what to include. And it just becomes a mishmash of everything. But when you hang on to that little personal thread, each
Mm.
of these things branch out into something beautiful, but it's still
Right.
connected, by that through line. So I
Mhm.
find it in my writing very useful
Right.
to have that one strand of personal narrative that
Mhm.
then branches into these different topics.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, I know you've had, like, the skill set and the experience of writing your own material, but have you ever felt the pressure, whether in your own material or just, like, theater experience broadly, to subscribe to a more Western philosophy or, like, stories, or just change your South Asian female identity in the process?
There is an unsaid pressure,
Mm.
because a lot of times it's like, wait, but people, Americans are not going to understand what this
Mhm.
is. And it takes a little bit of assertiveness to say, you know what, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like there's a section in The Elephant in the Room, for example, where I'm having this conversation with my mother, and it's a back and forth. And I was like, when she scolds me, this feeling that you get, I'm not getting that when I'm talking in English. I'm just going to break into Tulu right
Yeah.
now. And I don't care if no one understands. I just need them to feel it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's okay. they hang in there and they're with you, and they don't need to know exactly what was said in the moment. I'm sure they have an idea of what was said, but I guess at some point we just need to assert who we are and give ourselves the space to be, and that it's okay if the audience doesn't get a certain exactly what was said,
Right.
or you don't have to, like, a lot of times it's like the way I structure my words, sometimes it's very, of course I've been born and brought up in India. It's how we do it back home, and
Right.
those phrases are very, like, for example, this is not in my play, but it came up in conversation, but we club two things together. It's like meaning joining something together.
Yeah.
That's not a very commonly here. Clubbing means, you hit someone with a club, or going clubbing.
Yeah.
I don't know, but clubbing something together is not a term. So,
Yeah.
like, do I stop saying it? Why should I stop saying it?
No, that's part of
you
your
know
lexicon.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So at some point, I guess there comes a time when we just have to be okay with
Mm.
being ourselves unapologetically. And,
Hmm.
yeah, this is how
Yeah.
we say it. I'm going to continue saying
Right.
it that
Yeah. It's crazy. I don't know if you've experienced this as well, but like even me, I've been born and brought up here, but
way.
like because so many of the conversations that I've had and like the way that I've learned English and just like the surroundings that I've grown up in, like
Yeah,
my language is very half British English inherited
yeah,
from like my parents and like
yeah,
the culture, and half American English. And so many times in college or like in speech classes, you'll be made fun of
yeah,
for saying a word differently, but differently does not necessarily mean incorrect.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, for example, thrice is very common. I do it
Yeah.
twice. I'm going to tell you twice. I'm going to say it thrice,
Mhm.
but here it's three times. But if you say thrice, it's very Shakespearean. It's like, oh,
Oh.
fancy. Are you going to say thrice? You know? And for us, it's like thrice. We use it all the
Right.
time.
Yeah. That's really funny. Yeah. You are doing such incredible work in sharing your own story and like really bringing these changes in whatever capacity you have. And I'm wondering, what are the changes that you would like to see if you had like a magic wand or like a plan or something that could directly create change? What changes would you like to see in diversifying the industry?
um, that is such a difficult question. It doesn't seem like it, but it is
Yeah.
difficult. I would say I wish that people won't wait for you to arrive
Mm,
before seeing your talent. That especially for people of color and people of the global majority, I really
mm,
hope that our talent is recognized even when we are starting out.
mm,
Because one thing that I have noticed is after somebody else has acknowledged your talent, and once you've got that little seal of approval from someone, is when everyone else decides to jump on board.
mm.
And I wish artistic directors and whoever are the gatekeepers and whoever is in positions of power can recognize talent when they see it
Yeah.
without waiting for someone else to stamp their seal of
Right.
approval. And that is really my hope for all of us, because there is no dearth of talent.
Yeah.
For sure, we know that. It's just that there is dearth of opportunities, and
Mhm,
there is a serious need for um, us opening doors for each other, of course.
mhm,
But also I notice that what really holds us back a lot of times, and I say this of my peers, and I say this through my own experience of being an artist, is
mhm.
that a lot of times they know that you're onto something, but they're just waiting
Yeah.
for you to become big, or for
Mhm,
you to become a big name before
mhm,
they can take you seriously. And I really hope that that mindset changes,
mhm.
because I think that will really lead to a major burst of South Asian talent. And
Yeah.
is if we just stop for somebody else to give us that seal of approval before we're taken seriously.
Yeah, that's beautiful. This resonates with me. I read this quote recently that you become an artist the moment you start sharing your art with the world. And it's like, we really don't need anyone else's validation to be able to be proud of the stories that we have and that we want to share.
Yeah, and that also is a way of taking back power from systems like, like the big names like
Right.
Hollywood and
Yeah.
Broadway and all of that. Is you don't really need them to make you feel like you've really arrived.
Right.
You have arrived, like you said, when you're putting your art out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, that's beautiful. Yeah. I mean, that whole thing of like which shows get greenlit and which things get support, that's always going to be something that relies on another person to validate. I can't find another word, but like literally validate your work and finding that within yourself. Yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah. Is there anyone that has been especially influential to you in your artistic journey?
Yes. There are other artists, but there's also, I spoke of my mentor. I should name her Teresa M. Davis. She was my professor at the University of Virginia, Department of Drama. And now we continue to be in touch. And she's also the director of my play, The Elephant in the Room, and my artistic mentor, my friend. She has played a huge influence and a huge role in shaping me as an artist, and especially when I start buying into what the world is telling me that I can't do, and I start believing it. She's the one who's always come in and shattered that and said, "But Priyanka, remember that girl who put together a bunch of software engineers and did the play? Yeah, you're still that person." And also like other artists who've really excelled in what they do. Anna Devere Smith, Tectonic Theatre Project. They've developed their own technique of devising theatre. I love keeping a finger on the pulse and checking out what art is being created and who my collaborators could be. I always have an eye out for whose work do I really admire, and whether they're photographers, videographers, other artists, dancers, puppeteers. I guess my mind is always appreciative of their journeys, and I have a curiosity and inquisitiveness about their art, and which is very different from my trajectory, right? And learning from their experiences, but also finding ways to collaborate and letting those worlds collide and let art come out of that. So yes, I'm deeply inspired by other artists who have really excelled at their craft, and it's important to aspire to something. And I think it's very humbling for me, and for me to know that there's so much more ground to cover, and that never ends. The learning never ends.
Yeah, I want to go back to what you were saying about your mentor. When you feel like the world is getting to you, and she reminds you that of who you are. That's so beautiful. I think a lot of the conversations that I've been having recently with artists and South Asian artists, and you mentioned this before, is that how lonely it is. And to have someone on your side when you're hearing so many no's every day, to have people who will tell you that you're doing this and that is a good yes. So I'm just
for me, every no is a maybe later. And it is true. It is true. There are no's. Like I was at the APAP conference recently, which is a conference for like touring artists. And there was this one person who came to our booth and he's like, "Your show is just not right for our auditorium, but I just want to talk." I'm like, "Cool." And we had this conversation about, "Oh, why do you think this is not right for your space?" Whatever. It led to other things, and we had a genuine conversation about everything that was not related to why I was there. And then he was interested in knowing about the show. And he's like, "You know what? I want to book you." I was like, "Great." I mean, that was a no that turned into a yes very quickly, but a lot of times it is every no is a maybe later. This is not the right time. So
Yeah.
that's the way I've started seeing things. It's
Hmm.
hard though. Rejections do get you,
Hmm.
and there is a lot of that in our field, and there's so much of it that we deal with on a regular basis. But I think that knowing that a door closed right now doesn't mean it's not going to open again.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
good because you're in here for the long haul. That door is
Yeah.
going to open sometime for you.
Yeah.
Somebody else will be on the other side
Right.
and they'll open it for you
Yeah.
someday.
That's a great mindset. And speaking of touring, I
Ah.
know we had previously talked. How has your experience been sharing this show with non-American audiences in Edinburgh Fringe, say?
It's been really interesting, but I think what has worked for it is that universality
Hmm.
in themes. Um, that initially, when I wrote this play, The Elephant in the Room, that I'm currently touring with, I thought, who's gonna want to see a story about this very specific part of my life?
Mm.
And in writing it, I didn't realize that I touched upon so many topics like family dynamics,
Mm.
relationship with your mother, in the immigrant experience coming in, switching fields, fighting with your family about switching fields, which is a very, hot topic with younger
Yeah.
generation. When I perform at schools, they were like, "Oh my god!" Or even graduate students at
Hmm.
universities. There's death, dealing with loss,
Hmm.
falling in love. There's just so many aspects to it in this specific story that a
Hmm.
lot of people connect with. Like I've had people, I have Indian aunties, of course, in my play, and like I have
Everyone
aunties
does.
like that. They told me this, and then they told me that, and this is like across cultures. This is not other South Asians coming and telling me this.
Absolutely.
And then there's this one scene with my mom where I hold the hairbrush in a certain way and use that. Like a lot of our fights and arguments happened when she was brushing her hair. So that became, they're like, oh my gosh, even my mom does that, or my
Yeah.
grandma did that. So there's just so much that we don't know that we have in
Yeah.
common, which becomes that connective tissue.
Yeah.
And I think it's the coexistence of joy and pain in
Mm.
our cultural narratives. How there is so much joy, but there's also so much pain. And the humor, I use that as a vehicle a lot in my plays,
Hmm.
no matter how heavy the topics are,
Hmm.
to really I use humor as a vehicle to get us to a point where we can really talk,
Mm.
lay it all out there, and
Yeah.
talk without, cutting corners. Like really,
Mm.
yeah. So, and that's the way Elephant in the Room has shaped out to be. Is it starts as a very humorous piece, and then it gets darker
Mm.
and darker and darker, and people can't believe that, oh, this is the same show that
Yeah.
started that way. But I think it's such a powerful vehicle in getting there.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And okay, so this show is called A QISSAA, and QISSAA means episode. So
Yes.
is there one influential QISSAA that happened in your life that you think has had like a really great impact?
Oh, wow. There are so many. Let me think. Um, there was and this is kind of like a spoiler because it's in my show.
Hmm.
But there's this friend of mine. I used to be a blogger, and
Okay.
I used to work for a company called Infosys, and
Hmm.
so they had this company-wide blog called Infi Blogs. And
Okay.
I used to write like short fiction, and I used to
Yeah.
write these little humorous blogs out there.
Hmm.
And I had like a fan following
Amazing.
of other techies,
Yeah.
and so we had this huge network of people who would read each other's blogs. And there's
Hmm.
this friend of mine who I made. He's no more, and he his was the first blog I visited when I started blogging, and he was a regular reader of my blogs. But when we finally met, he said, "What are you doing in software? You belong in the arts."
Yeah.
And I think, like that woman who came and held my face and said, "You're going to go really far." I
Yeah.
think even before that happened, it was his words that really made me think of myself as an artist.
Mm.
Somebody else had seen something in me that I hadn't fully acknowledged as part of my identity. And sometimes you need that person in your life.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
sometimes, yeah, people play that role in your life. And in my case, this friend of mine, Deepu, really was the one who saw me for who I am. And he literally called it out. You belong in the arts. You need to get
Mm.
out of software.
Yeah.
And then I did. And it was his dream to be an actor, to be in theater.
Yeah.
And his dream sort of became mine. And then,
Mm. Mm.
um, so it's really beautiful. And that play that I told you about at the very beginning of our conversation that I did at our company was really done as a tribute to him. So I
Oh,
think he literally launched me into this
yeah.
world of the arts. So that is a very, very pivotal, life
Mhm.
changing for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, if there is one QISSAA, you have
Yeah,
to see how exactly it pans out when you see my play.
for
Uh,
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
but that is
He was your
one.
rocket fuel in a way.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. And is there any advice that you would offer an aspiring young South Asian artist or just like an artist in general?
Um, Create your own work, uh, because yes, also still pursue other opportunities. Don't
Mm.
just like, I still think I will go out and audition and continue to do the things that I did before,
Sure.
as an actor. But creating your own work gives you an opportunity to put your voice out there
Mhm.
and your personal storytelling out there. And all of us
Yeah.
have so many unique stories and life experiences. And these are stories waiting to be told, and
Yeah.
nobody else can really. I know this is a cliche and everyone says it all the time. Nobody else can tell these stories because only you have experienced them and only you've,
Mm.
it's your viewpoint.
Right.
So I think the world of arts will be richer the more original thinkers and creators we have in this field. So no matter which field you're in and what you're doing, always think of putting something out there that's created by you from
Mm.
scratch, and allow it to, yeah, to sort of steer your career for you rather
Mm.
than waiting on other opportunities to come to you.
Yeah.
Create your own opportunities. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my advice.
And you've done that in such a beautiful way. And how can people see your work and how can people like be in touch with you and get updated about your work?
Oh my gosh, yes. I think 2023-24 is going to be a great year in terms of touring with my
Mhm.
work. So I would say keep a tab on priyankashetty.com that has all of my
Mhm.
upcoming performances and information about that. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. I have a page, and the handle is always Priyanka Shetty Actor. I know it's a little long, but I was like so not imaginative and creative when coming up with a handle, and it's so awkward and clunky. Priyanka Shetty Actor.
No, I mean that's your identity. That's
Yeah,
your name.
so
Yeah.
yeah, you can find me on social media with that
Mhm.
handle, and yeah, just follow my journey, and we'll, yeah,
Yeah.
let's stay connected there.
Yeah. And for anyone who's watching, it's priyankashetty.com. So that's PriyankaShetty.com.
Yes, thank
Wow, I
you.
just felt like a little throwback to my spelling bee days. That was fun. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you would like to share that I have not asked?
Um, I think you pretty much covered everything. Um, I just want to share that I'm so grateful and I'm thankful that this platform exists for South Asian artists, and that we are here to hear each other's stories
Mhm.
and successes and failures and
Yeah.
everything, and we get to be a part of each other's journey. And I look forward to tuning into other interviews that you have out here. And I'm so, so happy that you're doing this. And I want to wish you the best in your own journey as an artist.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm honestly now that it's the 20th episode, I'm just like looking back on all of the conversations that I've had the honor of having with all these artists. it's so beautiful to have this shared space of community and
Yes.
learning, because every episode that I've had, I've learned something, if not many things from the guests that I've had. And it's also great to hear the audience's feedback on what they've learned and just um, experienced, and maybe they've shared with like a friend of theirs who's in the arts, or they found their own inspiration to dig into the arts in their lives. So it's
Yeah, and the arts are not exclusive to us. You can still have a steady job, and
yeah,
you're also invited to be a part of this world. Remember, I was a techie, so the arts is for everybody. So if you have a story that you want to write or put out there, you should totally do it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out to be a part of this interview. Really honored to share your story.
Thank you. And I'm honored to be here, and I had a blast speaking with you.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who is watching for tuning in. I really hope that this can serve as an inspiration to anyone who is interested in pursuing the arts and using their voice. Stay tuned for an update on the next episode of A QISSAA with Ishika. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. Like this video on YouTube if you're watching there, and share this video with your friends and family, anyone who you think might be interested in this. And yeah, that's it for today. All right. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.